I voted Jeremy Corbyn in 2019. I'm fundamentally a populist. I'm against the establishment. The establishment, Labour and Tories, have failed us. Tories for the last 14 years, Labour before them when they opened the wars and everything that went on with that. So, I saw, I was, what would I be, 19 or so. I was kind of naive, but I saw Jeremy Corbyn as a genuine voice, as someone who was trying to say something a bit different against the kind of Tory government. So I voted for him, and now I'm a Reform vote. So, that transition from Labour to Reform is a clear one.
There was a time when I was a Labour supporter back when Jeremy Corbyn was leader, but I went through a political journey that basically brought me to where I am now, being certainly on the right side of politics. And I just look at the major parties and just think most of them don't stand up for what I hold dear and what I care about. And Reform UK is the only party with a large enough following that I think will push the country in the direction I want.
I think Reform is sort of the first opportunity in a long time for us to get sort of a real change in politics, and actually to include, a lot of people which may have not even been interested in politics at all. And that includes a lot of young people as well.
Well, there are lots of reasons, but one of them is I'd like to report a house one day. Yeah, so house prices are influenced by supply and demand. If you've got a shortage of houses, then housing becomes expensive. And as it currently stands, we're letting in nearly 1 million people every year, net 906,000 last year. Letting in millions of people increases demand by millions of houses, and that makes housing more expensive. So I don't think people realise just how extreme that number is. We used to let in tens of thousands of people nets per year. But to keep up with the current rate, you need to build a city the size of Oxford, and one the size of Cambridge, and one the size of Peterborough, and one the size of Bath, and one the size of Durham, and one the size of Lancaster. And you'd still have 24,000 people left over, so you need to build a medium-sized town. We will never, ever build enough houses to keep up with the current rate of immigration. The only way we're ever going to cope with that is if we go back to normal.
We spoke to someone earlier who used to be a Jeremy Corbyn voter,
Yeah.
and he's moved towards Reform. What do you think the crossover is there, if any?
Oh, well, anti-establishment, obviously. A sense that the giant corporates now dominate the world that we live in, that politics is very much in the pockets of the big corporates. And it's where it's where my thinking and Corbyn's does cross over. I mean, Corbyn was a Eurosceptic right from the very start, because he thought that what Brussels would do is be good for big banks and big businesses and bad for everybody else. Well, he was pretty much right. So there are some crossovers, yeah. And similarly, quite a lot of Trump voters would in the past have thought Bernie Sanders was the guy that they would have voted for. And the unfairness of the economic system as it's currently structured, I think, is at the root of it. Something very interesting going on with Gen Z, as the Americans call them, almost like a rejection of what they're being taught at school. They're kind of being taught that they should hate the country, hate its history. Nelson was a terrible man, Churchill was even worse. And they're kind of just sticking two fingers up gradually to this and saying, this is ridiculous. Why are you doing this to us? And the other one is ambition. A lot of them feel, how are we going to have what our parents and grandparents had? How are we ever going to have a house? I also think that generation suffered through lockdown more than the older generations. They were denied many of the things that kids normally growing up would have had. So there seems to be a sort of defiance that's coming into a whole load of them, a level of ambition to want to make money, get a good job, do well, that I don't think was there with the millennials, who were busy talking about work-life balance or whatever else it might be. I'm not including you, obviously. So yeah, there's something going on. It's more with young men than it is with young women at this moment in time. And we're seeing that pattern repeated. We're seeing it in France, we're seeing it certainly in Italy, to some degree in Germany, and in America. I mean, who would have thought that Trump would have got 44% of the under 30 vote? I mean, that is completely, from 2016, this is like 3 times the figure. So yeah, something big's going on, and you're seeing it today here in Chelmsford. Quite a lot of young people here.
I'd like to portray Reform as this sort of fringe star rights party. It's not at all. And Nigel Farage gave a speech where he spoke about how Reform is at the centre ground of British public opinion. The Labour and Conservative parties just don't represent what huge fractions of the public actually want. So that's why we have such low voter turnouts. Labour got its majority in Parliament with only 20% of the population actually voting for them. So what's happening is millions of people who otherwise would be disenfranchised with politics, or who might be forced to vote for one of the other parties, realising that they've saw this opportunity to vote for a party which is supplying what they actually want.
I see what Labour and Tories have done mainly since when Tony Blair got in. I've just seen British culture has been diluted and it's watered down, and it's not the I read about what life is like before I was alive. I look at old archive footage, I look at photographs, I hear what my parents say, what other old people in my community say about what life was like, and I just think I want that for myself.
Thousands of homes is not going to cut it. We need millions. And building millions of homes is an unrealistic project. You'll never do that. Governments can announce whatever targets they want. That doesn't mean they can hit them. And, it's a devastating cost. So when my parents moved to my hometown, they could afford a 2-bedroom terrace house for £10,000 to £15,000. Today, that same house would cost £250,000. And the interest on the loan could equal the cost of the house itself. So you might be paying £500,000 for what used to be only 10,000. Now, the average Brit makes £30,000 a year after tax. Before tax. Before tax. So after tax, you're left with 20,000 or so, which means your lifetime earnings after tax, if you work for 40 years, would be about £800,000. If you're forced to spend £500,000 out of your 800,000, you just lost most of the money you'll ever spend to immigration, essentially. Housing used to be housing is an essential necessity, which used to be a tiny fraction of the cost.
I actually had a look this morning where the highest turnout and where the lowest turnout. The highest turnout was in Winchester, it was in Cambridge, it was Liberal, Lib Dem and Labour seat stronghold, right? The lowest turnout, you're looking at 25% in some cases, was in Yorkshire and the Humber, and it was in Lincolnshire. These are all places where Conservatives won and Reform was second place in nearly all these seats. So you're seeing a situation where most normal people have no way of getting their voice out. They have no representatives in government, but they represent 4% of the country. I disgusted. They're horrified by what's going on in the spectrum. And they're all going to vote for Reform. And if we can get the things who typically don't vote to vote, it will be a Trump-esque landslide in 2029 if we can mobilise that support.
What is so fascinating, I don't understand it though, is why people in our big two parties seem to have no comprehension of what social media even is. They don't bother. And then they become party leader, and their parties spend millions on advertising to try and build up some sort of followership, and none of it's really genuine because it's not been built organically, it's not strong, and so there is no connection. Whereas, I've always had, and this, I've had a team of people around me, we've worked hard on social media for well over a decade, and we've got a big following, 5.5 million people following me across the various platforms, including 1 million on TikTok. So I've actually reached out and engaged. So a lot of these young people think they know me, and to some extent they do. The other party leaders haven't even tried. And frankly, dare I say it, but a lot of our leading political figures are pretty dull.
Keir Starmer, for one, comes across as a bit wooden, bit of a charisma vacuum.
I think a big part of it is sort of just the image generally, and the image of approachability and of inclusion, the inclusion of young people. I think that is what actually is going to get people to the ballot box, people going out campaigning. And I think the party is doing that quite well already, which is why you're seeing a lot of young people like me here.
Do you think that Elon Musk has helped with the last couple of months? Do you think that's brought young people into the party?
Massively. He's such a hero figure to the younger generation. Hey, he's going to send them to Mars, That's what young people have told me that. So I think Musk helps, and Musk, and whatever he might say about X, Y, or Z, Musk is a pretty cool figure. The bomber jacket, the shades, the space programs, all the things that he's doing, and I think there's a kind of young reform element out there that think this is pretty cool.
Do you think that Labour have made a big mistake by not reaching out or offering an olive branch to him?
Well, Labour don't know what to do, and to be fair, they're in a very tough position because he's the richest man in the world, who Labour would clearly love to invest big money in Britain with a big battery factory or whatever it may be, and he's lobbing bricks at them every day, particularly Starmer. and the last 48 hours, what happened in 2008 as Director of Public Prosecutions. I don't know, you don't know yet the truth of, was there a case there that he should have brought and didn't bring for whatever reason. So they're in a very difficult position. They're in a very difficult position. But in fact, more broadly, they're in a difficult position with the incoming American administration because all of them have been incredibly rude about Trump over a period of time. And that's a problem because our relationship with America, particularly in terms of defence, without them, what are we? We're nothing. So, yeah, he's got some real problems here.